Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm joined by Naci and Kevin, who are working on how AI is reshaping education, skills, and how we prepare the next generation for a world that is very quickly changing. So, I've been working in AI for many years now, and more recently, I found myself not only caring or thinking about the technology itself, but also thinking about how that affects society, how that affects our schools, our education system, and companies in general. So, as a mom of a 6-year-old and a 8-month-old baby, I deeply care to see how we're going to help them through this changing world. And one thing that keeps coming up is while AI is moving very fast, our systems, our education systems, our policy, and even our parenting styles are struggling to keep up. So, in this conversation, I'd like to explore how we navigate this. And I have two very lovely guests, Naci and Kevin. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Maybe Kevin, do you want to start?
Hi, thanks for having us. I'm Kevin. I'm also a dad of two, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. Originally from Germany, now living in Spain, and was lucky to meet Naji about 1.5 years ago. No, Naji?
Approximately, yes.
Amazing.
Um, I have a background in technology, have been working in tech for 25 years in engineering, and got a master in digital transformation, focused on human-centric digital transformation and nowadays on AI adoption, because this topic is more human than most people think. Naji, you can go.
Can I? Okay, that is my name, Naci. It is actually Mehmet Naci. We just discussed it, but everybody calls me Naci. And I am a relatively well-educated guy. I have a double major, as it is called in the American system, especially a double bachelor, cybernetics, computer sciences, electronics, plus molecular biology. And then I did two masters. One of them is because I worked a lot with molecular biology, which is what we usually call computational science, not computer science exactly. We needed all the statistical and database methods and all that stuff. So I studied what we today call data science very early in my life, applied statistics and data science. That was my first master. And then I am originally from Turkey. I moved to Norway to go on studying, and I had a computer science master's and a PhD in computer science here. A very lucky one, because I was one of the few who had the chance to work with the founders of object-oriented programming. Kristen Igor and Uli Jandal were my teachers. And Ellen Histal was my project leader, a very interesting lady. I'm taking this a little bit long because it's relevant for what we're going to talk. It was one of the first attempts to use machine recognition, one form of AI. Now I'm talking about 1977, 78. That's pretty old compared to what we assume AI's age is these days. It was handwritten character recognition by the computers. That was one of the first projects. And the second project was to convert text to voice, basically. Now, it was already there. That is more or less my background. I have been working at the university and in companies. I was the chief architect of Oracle. I was an associate professor at the University of Oslo, the computer science department, and I worked at one of the first research institutes of Norway, Norwegian Computing Center, as the leader of the center, of the computer part of the center. So that's sort of my background. And I met Kevin about 1.5 years ago through someone we knew in common, another German. But we can get back to that. But this is, I think, enough. But I am an educator. I have kids. They're not so young any longer. They're not kids, absolutely not. But I have been in education, and I have understanding of where we're going and where we're not going. So that was
Amazing.
from me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both. I think these are amazing backgrounds. I think we the three of us have really strong backgrounds in technical engineering things, and now we're going to be talking. Well, Kevin, you've been transitioning into, I guess, more societal impact sooner than me or Naci. All right, lovely. So thank you for those introductions. So okay, so what problem are you trying to solve at a high level with Crafting Tomorrow?
I think Kevin goes first.
Well, we're trying to solve a very, very small problem, prepare our children and workforce as well for the changes that are yet to come, and how to be more agile and faster in this adoption rate, because the educational system, no matter what educational system we're talking about, no matter which country and which level of education, is simply reactive at the moment. So, and this doesn't work with the fast-paced changes that we see in society and technology in special.
Right. But why do you think that the education systems are much slower than the pace of AI? So what's happening in the education system that they're struggling to keep up?
Well, to be honest, everything is much slower than the pace of AI. So it's not just the educational system; it's everything. And technology has always been fast, and AI is just faster than anything that we've seen so far. So, and to be fair, this, because I don't want this to be a bashing of education. The thing is, education is much more than just AI. For the big landscape of education, technology or AI is simply one tiny puzzle piece, isn't it? So they
Yeah.
can't put their full focus on just this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go deeper into how education will change. But yeah, go ahead, Mehmet.
Yeah,
Naci.
yeah, and I have my 5 cents as well. I mean, I was at a political meeting last night, and one of the things that has been being discussed, it's not just last night, it has been discussed for a while now, how fast things are changing. Not only now, but also before AI, we had social media, and we didn't manage to get hold of that either. And the society has a latency, an inertia. It is very difficult to change its direction as fast as these deterministic little goblins engineering things, technologies are changing. It's impossible. I mean, it's not only AI. AI is changing, as Kevin said, even faster than before, but things change. And things change usually much faster than the societies can keep up with. And
Yes.
education is one part of it. And education is a very bureaucratic part of it. And bureaucracy is a set system, especially in Europe. And it does not change that easily, does not adapt. So those are the things that are being discussed.
Yes.
Maybe some of the reasons, at least. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, we can even talk about screens and computer in general. How long did it take that we had like proper computer science classes and technology in the classroom? I don't want to go into rather this is good or bad or something, but I mean, it took probably 20 years at least to introduce and get teachers up to speed. And even nowadays, you still see, especially in the public sector, teachers who are not confident in digital technologies. So there is, especially here in Europe, we see that we still have a lot to do on general basic digital literacy.
That's correct.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes. All right. So what I'm hearing is that AI is changing really fast. Education systems are struggling to keep up because they're by nature much slower, and anything is much slower than AI, like Naci said. But how will then AI affect the education, the skills, and the children once we start incorporating it more into the classroom? So what changes do you guys see that are happening or will happen?
Again, Kevin starts, I think. I mean, we should make this a standard. Kevin starts, I support.
Okay. Okay. So in general, what we see or what is promised. So we, bluntly honest, we don't know if AI changes everything at the moment. Yeah. So this is a current belief. I believe so as well, because the technology has great potential. But obviously, we also need to see how we as a society develop it and what big tech is doing and so on. It can turn out in just another disaster like social media, as Naci mentioned earlier as well. But it can also turn out into something very beautiful and very good for society. So and we're at the crossroads, in my opinion, at the moment. But let's go to the scenario that it turns out to be something good, and then it will literally change the way we educate ourselves in general, because how education developed in a nutshell, no, not very detailed, but we moved from one-to-one education back in the days 2000 years ago, where we had like master apprentice. We moved towards classroom education. So, but even in the beginning of classroom education, when we look into the university of, I think it was Oxford or something like that, the students still had a personal tutor and mentor at their side. So they had the classroom plus mentor. But then obviously, because education became more public and a human right, we had to get rid of the mentor part because we just don't have the workforce. So, and now with AI, we have the potential that we get this personal tutor back. And I always like this idea, this thought, this vision of having your personal mentor from a very young age already that knows your whole life and that you don't just carry with you in your pocket during K-12 education, but also later when we talk about lifelong learning, when we talk about professional education and further education and so on. And just this mentor that has learned over all those years how you think, how you need to learn, how you understand things, because this is very different as well. No, every person has a different way of learning. So, and having this personal mentor in your pocket that knows how you understand things is a very beautiful thought.
I love it. I love the optimism. Go ahead, Mehmet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. The question was, how will technology or AI impact education? Well, I want to take it a step back and say the question should be how technology has impacted and will impact the society, because education is part of the society and it is one of the pillars of the society. It is we humans delivering to the next generation our knowledge, preparing the society. I mean, they will be. We are the society today. We educate them. They will be the society tomorrow. So that is really the impact on society. That's a major part of, at least. And how will it impact it? Well, there are many scenarios. I mean, there is this dystopic scenario, the robots taking over and everybody's fighting everybody kind of future. And then there is this more optimistic, at least technology optimistic scenario, saying AI is going to save us, basically. I'm not so sure whether Kevin said it explicitly, but he at least implied that there is a balance between these two. It's neither the Terminator scenario, nobody's going to come after that, nor the sky is the limit scenario, basically. But it does have its negative and positive effects. We can start talking about let's just talk about the dystopic part. It can help criminals. It can increase unemployment. And we're talking quite a lot about that kind of stuff. It can impact people's mental states. We have seen cases of that negatively. And all that stuff. So there are lots of things that it can break in the society. It can also be used to manipulate elections, for example. It can actually impact democracies. We're seeing it. So the negative sides are definitely there. But then let's go back and look at how it can impact positively. Well, the first thing one thinks of is that it will be able to help us advance faster. It's the technology that gives us tools, new tools. It's a bit like the hammer or the machinery that we build the homes with and all that stuff. I mean, it made things faster, or the car that made us travel faster and get things done faster. It's a technology, and that will impact us in a positive manner if used properly as well. So it is increasing efficiency, effectivity, which is the other side of losing jobs, because as we basically get AI to do a good deal of the jobs, then some people will lose jobs. But this is nothing new. I mean, people who own horses and carts lost their jobs when the cars were introduced. This has happened. When the word processors were introduced, the secretaries, the typists lost their jobs. But they did find other jobs. Society didn't stop there. What I think I'm trying to say is that there is a balance. We need to understand both sides of it and try to improve how it impacts on the positive side, and try to package and avoid how it may impact on the negative side. But it does have an impact, definitely.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And if we think of that in education as well, and this is what you just said, Naci. There is a balance, but no one really talks about this balance at the moment. It's like one extreme or the other, and
Yes, that's true.
and this is also in education. So if I talk to teachers and everything, I often hear that they are pro banning the technology. Don't let the children use it, instead of rethinking the way we educate and we deliver material and stuff like that. And what we see, I have been at a lecture some days ago at the university where I teach as well, and it was about AI in the classroom. And the lecturer, he literally said or gave examples of how to use AI and ChatGPT and co for assignments and also for assessments. So, and then in the next sentence he gave examples. Yes, I let my students use it, but then I create my tests in a way that they can't use AI to get the answers to those questions. Yeah. So, but what he beautifully stated when I asked him and said like, okay, why do you let your students use AI if you then on the other hand put in more effort that they can't use AI? That's when he said, because I want to prepare my students for the future, because they have to use the technology. Every company is literally forcing the employees nowadays to use this technology, more or less. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's why when he said, I want them to be prepared for using this technology, and in a good and ethical way, and everything like
Yeah.
that. So
So
that's
so
his
yeah. So what
responsibility.
I guess So what I'm hearing is that there has to be this balance between going too far and adopting everything blindly and just opening everything versus banning everything. There's somewhere in this middle
Yes.
where we need to strike that balance, and I think that balance is very hard to strike because it's a lot of moving parts. But this is what this conversation is about, and I love the optimism and looking both at the negative sides of it, but also the positive sides of it. And can we talk a little bit more about the positive sides of AI? Because I feel like there's a lot of fear mongering, and
That's
yes, I mean I'm also a bit fearful. But what are the positives for both for the children and for society? Like maybe we can go deeper into that.
I mean, as I already mentioned a bunch of positive
Yes.
things already, and we see that it has the potential to make us faster and more efficient in a ways if
Yes.
used correctly. So this is
Yes.
what needs to be very, very clear. So because we also already see the downsides of it, that it lets us forget or unlearn how to think. No,
Yes.
because it's not used correctly. So this is
Yes.
again this
Balance.
balance, and
Yeah.
what we all still need to learn, and what very, very few have mastered so far, to
Yeah.
be honest. But this is
Yeah.
what we need to teach the kids. But
Yeah.
if we are able to teach them this this skill of critical thinking, and also to finding this balance and using it correctly, we have so much potential there. And as I said, this personal mentor, in terms of creativity, and I mean, we literally have the second brain, and we can come up with completely novel ideas that we what would have taken us weeks or months or so to come up with. Yeah. So for me, the greatest benefit is speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Want to jump in, Mehmet?
Well, no, I can always say a couple of words about that because it's important to understand also the vision, not just what it can bring today, but there is a possibility that people will, if used correctly, as Kevin said, that AI will help so much to automate some of the or most of the stuff that we're doing. Also with AI in robots that we're slowly seeing actually doing bodily work, not only theoretical or computer or writing work, that kind of stuff. We can see a future, we can speculate, I think is what I would like to say. We can speculate on a future where people have much more time, have enough sufficient income, money, housing, and all that stuff also may be facilitated by these robots and AI, that we have a much richer and more creative life. So that is, if done correctly, a vision that can also be the future. And some of the politicians here, at least in Norway, are discussing this today, talking about the citizen wages. That people stop working 8 hours, they work maybe 3 hours, maybe 3 times a week, and then, but they get full salary, etc., etc. So those are potentially good sides that we can harness.
But there's the other perspective on this, that we do not just work for salaries. No, it's not just about money. It's not just about freeing us. We've got this intrinsic motivation. We need to have a purpose in life and everything, and that's a thing that we need to figure out. But I agree that that especially if we talk about robotics now, and there's much more potential, even also in terms of safety. I mean, why do humans need to run into burning buildings or something? Or why do we need to do mining jobs or go down in manholes if we can have robots to do that? So the world could be a much safer place if we get this right.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky one, and it's a big topic, and I'm not sure, honestly, because yes, I am optimistic, but in this sense, I'm not so optimistic, because this needs to be a full change in society, and I'm not sure if we can achieve this. I would love to, but I'm not sure if
That's That's what
Kevin,
we're working on.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's exactly what we are trying to do in crafting tomorrow. We are trying
Yeah.
to craft the tomorrows
Yeah.
that we
Yes.
want as we want it. And
Yes.
as when it comes to having too much time but no purpose, well, that is something that is also something that needs to be addressed, like everything else. That humans need to have something to do, be creative, and not just be plants lying around. So those are the challenges to solve, yes. But it is possible that we maybe start in crafting tomorrow, you and me and our friends, maybe take the first step towards
I
that.
do believe that we can change education. I really do believe that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I mean, we are talking about broader societal impacts
Yes.
and now
But
how
so
we live and everything. So
yes.
I'm
So
not sure if we
yes.
can achieve that at crafting tomorrow.
But what I hear is that there's many potential futures, right? From how we move from this technology onwards, there's many potential futures that we could develop into. And I think what we're doing today is bringing these voices such that we create this balance. Because on the one hand, I see that we could have a beautiful future, like you just said, Mehmet, where we actually don't have to work. We can choose to work. And where we have more speed and we're more productive and we solve science problems much more easily. I think you've all hinted at this beautiful future, but there's also the other side of it, like you said, Kevin, where does that where do we find meaning then if we don't we don't work? So there's a lot of other questions there, but perhaps then I think we can jump into what is crafting tomorrow. What is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish?
And now you start, Naci.
Why? You're giving me the difficult one. Yeah, well, it is really, the name implies quite a lot. We are trying to help in crafting tomorrow. I see education as an important pillar in society. So if we are going to ever have a chance to change society and be prepared for the future, then we need to look at education. And I need to define education a little bit, which Kevin, I believe, started with slightly. It is not only primary and secondary education and university education. It is also educating us, the society, parents, people in, for example, AI or digital literacy, understanding our own world. It is also helping companies plan and reskill their employees, for example. So it's education is all over the place. It's learning. And that is part of the industry and part of the society. What we are trying to do in crafting tomorrow is pretty ambitious. So I hope you're sitting tight now. We want to be able to detect changes, identify changes, not only in technology, of course, in technology. And now I'm not saying only AI, but any technology, because AI is one technology, and there will be other impacts or other disruptions, other technologies. So what we want to be able to do is detect, identify changes in technology in general, and in the labor market, what skills are coming in and what skills are dropping out, and in the industries, how things are more efficient or less efficient, in which way, and in the society, what is threatening people, their psychological life, their social balance, or not, basically. And what we are trying to do is capture all that and identify how they impact educational run. What we need to put into education from year one, or zero actually, all the way through, so that we can be prepared immediately, not after 3 to 5 years, which is too late with the speed that technology is changing and everything is changing, so that we are, the society and the educational system is prepared from day one to adapt to these changes and bring up the kids that are ready for the future and reskill the workforce that are ready for today, etc. So that is exactly what we're doing.
Exactly. And
Beautiful.
AI is just one part of this right now. And to give you a more example, what we do then when we've identified these changes in terms of AI now, for example, is we then identify, okay, how does this impact education? And as Naci said, education also means parenting, also means upskilling, reskilling, and so on and so on. So one product now is, for example, what we call Living with AI, which is a curriculum for schools that combines those three important pillars in a school community. So we've got the students who obviously receive those classes. We've got the teachers who give those classes. So it's not us who provide those classes. It's basically a train the trainer concept. And then each of these lessons has a parent activity as well. So after each lesson, the parents receive a letter with a take-home activity. Nothing big, because it doesn't. It shouldn't feel like homework for the parents, no. But it can be like a little dinner table conversation about the topic or something, just to get the parents involved and teach them some of the language that is needed as well, because this is language is a very important thing in this context, because parents are missing this language. There is content. I mean, you know how it is. We have enough content on the internet to learn about AI and technology, but many parents simply do not know what to look for, and they need the language. So and this is just one example, and everything that we are doing connects these different dots, because we've identified that there is a big gap between all those pillars that we have. Businesses, schools, parents, they are all somehow disconnected in a way.
Yes, Kevin. So maybe you can go a bit deeper, because you've been talking to schools and to parents and to many different stakeholders in this system. So what do you see? Last time we talked about, responsibility, everybody pointing at each other. And maybe you can explain for people what you see when you're on the ground. And then later we move on to deeper into your solution.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is what I call the responsibility gap at the moment. So we've got these four major stakeholders in our children's lives, which is the school, the parents, and the school points to the parents, says, yeah, you need to teach this at home. The parents point to the school, say like, yeah, but we don't have the skills. You need to teach that. The schools then point back and say like, yeah, but we can only teach within our four walls. Then both of them are very unhappy and point to the governments and say like, yes, you need to bring regulation and rules and laws and whatsoever into force. And then the governments point to the big tech companies, to the corporates, and say like, yeah, you need to get your act together. And they simply change their terms and conditions and do as they've always done. Don't change anything. Maybe hire a fancy ethics C-level executive or something. But that's it. And then we've got in the center of these four stakeholders, we've got our children, who simply grow up in this jungle, try to figure out what to do, because no one is really looking at them, and because everyone is busy pointing at each other, and that's the responsibility gap that we are seeing right now.
That is a big responsibility, and people don't know what to do, and they just point at each
Exactly.
other to try to get information and what to do. So
Exactly, and because we know that the courts will not change, the big tech will not do anything. We've seen that the last 20 years. They just want to make money. And governments are too slow. I mean, we see big changes now, and there's a lot happening in politics in this field at the moment.
Yeah.
But what we can really influence at the moment is the parent school bridge
Yeah.
and network there. And this is where we need to find a common language and talk the
Yeah.
same language. And I usually say, it takes a village to raise children, and this
Yeah.
village needs to go digital, and that's what we've lost somehow in the digital world. We are connected, but more disconnected than ever before due to in terms of digital technology.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to change, and we can only change this in the school communities and in this neighborhood communities, because there's also a lot of peer pressure. Many parents that I've talked to, they are not a fan of technology per se.
Mhm.
They would rather not hand their kids a smartphone or anything, but it's the peer pressure of the whole society again. Yeah? And that's where we come to the society Naci again, where we can have this impact and everything, because many parents simply feel pressured into giving their kids technology because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's no safeguards. Mehmet, you talked about, sorry, Naji, you talked about an analogy with the car. So cars are great, right? But maybe you can explain it. What's the analogy between AI and the car and the safeguards of that?
Well, I use that as an analogy for change and how it impacts and how it needs to be regulated in the end. The balance needs to be found in the end. Because I mean, it's straightforward. If you had cars and no roads and no traffic rules, people would be dying in numbers. And we wouldn't be able to get fast enough from one point to the other. No transport will function as transport any longer. So initially, the car was just a toy, a new technology that the cart and horse owners reacted to because they were doing that job, basically. And then the cars came to be. We saw and we see. It's not. This is just an example. Of course, it's valid for every technology. I mean, it is very difficult when a technology put its nose into the society. It's very difficult to tear it out and pull it away. So it will stay. So technology always wins. We know that very much because it is convenience and this and that. Yeah. Anyway, but the car, which is a convenience, then had to be, the people had to realize that it was, yes, the monster that everybody was afraid of, unless it was regulated, which then could make it into a very positive, nice convenience tool, which is what happened with the traffic rules and the roads and the belts and this and that. It has tried to remedy the negative sides. And that's the analogy for AI. The AI is another technology. It's a bit like the car. And it does have its potential positive parts and its dangers. So we need to chisel off the corners and make it look proper and usable. We need to regulate that
Yeah.
technology as well.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
analogy.
But we
Yeah.
also need to be fair and say that the impact of AI is much bigger, no? So much wider. A car has local impact in a way, no?
No. The
But
history of
AI, I have never heard of like a potential that a car can influence governments and elections and everything like that, for example.
but
So
it did.
want to say, did
The
it?
car, yes. First the train and then the car made stores and collective production possible,
Mm-hmm.
because now you didn't need, just to take it as an example, to go to a tailor. You could have an average size measure, and then you could create many jackets and pants and skirts and whatever in different sizes and ship them all over the place. So it did impact the society, and this is a well-known fact, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this global production and trade started. Basically, well, it's not exactly, but it was many times accelerated because of the train and then the car. So transport today, just imagine, remove transport and go to your neighboring supermarket, you won't find anything. That's
right.
as simple as that. So it does impact the society, and but it impacts it in a way that is very important for people, because it impacts what you find, what you can get your hands on, what you eat, your economy. It is an important one. We don't see it anymore because it's been regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so ingrained that we don't really know,
Yes.
but it's super interesting.
Yes.
Super interesting take. Love
Yeah.
it. All right. So, okay, so we've discussed how AI is similar to the car and transportation, how those technologies, there's some parallels that can be drawn, although there's perhaps some disagreements on exactly what that means, but this is super interesting. Mehmet, oh, sorry, Naci, you wanted to talk about the solutions out there that are available at the moment, and then we can go deeper into the crafting tomorrow solutions. But first, you wanted to say a little bit of what's available today and where are the gaps.
Well, these large language models or generative pre-trained models, or what we just call AI these days.
Yeah,
Basically,
it's now all AI.
Yeah, it's all AI. That is available, and that is relatively easily available, and it's becoming cheaper and cheaper, as you probably know. It's almost exponentially falling down, negative exponentially, the prices and all that stuff. And many people have access today, and well, practically anybody. There are many people who use it at maybe not a very professional level, but it is a tool that is available widely in the society. And many people are trying to use it for writing their CVs, job applications. There's I review all the papers that they are preparing, scientific papers and God knows what, or analysis. Today it is being used, and it is the technology that is available today. But it is available in several ways. This technology that we are seeing, I have to say this, is the big tech technology. That's the one that is being used. And it is a very risky technology to use at the same time. And one of the things that I keep on mentioning, especially in political quarters, when people start talking about regulation, which I, of course, support, is that when you talk about regulating, you're not really regulating the AI. The AI is just a tool. You're regulating the developers, the owners of them, so that they curb the functions, they control that harm doesn't happen when people use that tool. And as Kevin nicely put, we can't really regulate them. They don't give it. Yeah, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, but that's a big problem, and that's what many people don't realize. They have a strategy, in my opinion. So what we've seen in the last, starting like in the last, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, is that we have this backlash on social media. So society is slowly waking up. This year, it's getting more and more. But last year we saw the so-called social media ban in Australia. We see other countries debating the same thing now, also here in Europe, and they see their revenue streams going away, drifting away. And this is what we all really need to bear in mind. The same people, the same companies that gave us social media are in control of the AI technology that we are using every day at the moment. So this is a very, very dangerous movement.
You're talking
Okay,
about
we've got OpenAI.
Yeah.
OpenAI didn't give us social media. I mean, they tried with Sora, with Sora 2 to create a social media platform, but luckily they've stopped that now. But then still we have got Meta, we've got Alphabet,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got Amazon, not so much, but those are the big players, no? So they are all in the same bubble. Even Anthropic and OpenAI are in the same big tech bubble. You know, we do not need to fool ourselves that they simply want to create something good for humanity. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe initially OpenAI, when they started with their vision back in the years, yes, I believe that they did so. But nowadays they are all money-driven corporates. So, and when we now talk about the social media ban, I also want to mention that this is not about banning our children or teenagers from social media. It's banning big tech from accessing our children. This is also a very, very important framing that we need to have in our mind, because what big tech is already doing is they run huge marketing campaigns and say, yes, you're banning teenagers from our platforms and so on, so that they are the good ones again, you know, and that the children that might still use it are the bad ones because they found the sneaky way around it. Yeah, but it's not the case. So most of those regulations, they are framed in a way that no, we are not criminalizing the children. We're criminalizing the platforms that let
Yes.
children access them.
Yes.
Platform.
It has a
Yes.
name. In political circles, it's called technology feudalism. That's
Mhm.
back to the Middle Ages, basically, because they are the oligarchs that are controlling most of what's happening, including, as I mentioned earlier, the elections and who's going to get the attention and this and that. So it is they're controlling social systems as well. It's not only the technology, and it is. But then back to the original question you asked, what technology exists today? There are alternative technologies that are built from scratch with the guardrails in place as well. There is an effort because of the geopolitical misbalance that happened lately. Europe has been reacting because these oligarchs are primarily in the US, or the big tech companies. The alternatives are in China. And that's the only two alternatives we're given today. The technology feudalism that is pressured upon us. But Europe, because it has been pressurized and because it does no longer have the technology leadership, has started reacting, because they also see the risks. I mean, you can do all kinds of wrappings around these tools, but in the end, you're giving them data, and the data is available if their governments ask for it, and that's it. Basically, you can't avoid those risks. So what other new technology exists is like one of the ones that I like very much as I looked deeper into it, like Kevin suggested to me. It's called Green PT. It's a Dutch AI, if you want. And as the name implies, it uses less energy. It is better regulated. It is more compliant it's designed to be compliant from the start with the AI Act and all that stuff. So we have also the alternatives. And Mistral, the French one, that's also getting there. And there are several others that we are in Crafting Tomorrow working with. Ionis is a UK-German one. It's a cloud vendor. And Cloda is a Swedish-based AI-first cloud vendor as well. And they are getting there. So the technology is getting, one of my best examples, the one that I loved the moment Kevin showed it to me, was Kinder GPT. Kinder GPT is GPT, generative pre-trained thing, AI. It's a large language model. It is made for kids. It is made safely, made with safety by design from the start. So these exist as well.
Yeah. I think this is going to be super important because parents in my school, for sure, will be looking for these solutions. So it would be nice to add these in the comment section so that
Yes,
parents can actually.
Kinder GPT is a partner from us, and as Naci said, they are designed safely from scratch. So they run their own servers in Berlin,
Oh, really?
have their own GPUs and everything. So they've completely trained their own model, and you can access it via app, and then you have like little storytelling avatars,
wow.
for example. But
You should see.
you can also create your own avatars. So that's what we are doing, for example, with the
Okay.
Living with AI lessons as well. Each of the lessons, so we have like these cute little characters in our lessons that guide through the sessions and topics, yeah. And each of these characters now has an avatar, so the kids can, after the lesson, hop onto Kinder GPT and ask follow-up questions, for example, that are trained on the lesson material.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, and then this GPT has certain guardrails in place.
They have many GDPR lawyers and ethicists and whatsoever on board. They are fully focused on these aspects, and I've tested it with my little daughter already, and I've also red teamed it a little bit myself. There's no way that you can get like weird responses, and but this is also one thing that I always teach parents. You need to understand the technology a little bit. So of course Gemini and ChatGPT also have some safeguards at the moment, but you always have the context window. So at some point when you have very long discussions, it tends to forget some of those safeguards. Yeah, that's what happened with some of those suicides that Naci mentioned as well earlier. So because those kids were chatting with the same chat for a month, for 2 months or something, So and obviously that's like way out of the context window. But this system is designed to be safe. So it's not, like I said, they are not relying on ChatGPT or Gemini. They have their own model. They have like several layers of safety implemented and stuff like that. So it is very safe.
Amazing.
And it's beautiful. It's
yes.
I mean, it is.
It's a very nice app.
Also, it is. I don't know. It's almost
visually.
like visually extremely nice.
Oh wow!
For children, it's very
for children. Amazing.
Child-friendly, yeah.
So I certainly needed to check it out.
Yes.
I love that there are aspects and solutions out there that parents can use. Okay, so let's go deeper into the Crafting Tomorrow solution. You have an analytical engine. What does that do, and what do you guys do more specifically?
Yeah, the analytical engine is more or less the core that when you ask what Crafting Tomorrow is trying to achieve. What I described then is what analytical engine enables. There are a couple of modules that enable that exactly, which is it is the watchdog, if you want. It goes around and watches continuously what's changing, what's happening, what is in the job market situation, the skills situation, the new technologies and this and that and all that stuff that's coming. And it's not only AI. It could be any other new technology. It could be AI related like robotics, but it could also be energy related, maybe whatever. So whatever the new technologies are coming, and when it has today, these days we call these things agents, as you probably know. It has an agent that's looking out and identifying everything that's changing with a potential to impact, and then there's another one that evaluates the impact of those on different things that we are interested in, like educational systems, skills, educational structure as well, because it's not given that today's 3-year bachelor is a good idea. Today's 3-year high school mixed vocational education is a good idea. Maybe and maybe we should start teaching kids in STEM subjects, in science and technology subjects much earlier, maybe. So, and maybe kids should start a little bit later with another structure. So the whole school structure, the educational structure itself is in question as well. It will be impacted. Classroom teaching style, it will be impacted. We know those things. So that the changes is one thing that the analytical engine looks at, and then its impacts on education and the educational system and the skilling system and the society, basically. So that is what the analytical engine is. Yeah.
And how does that then tie into the school? So they will get this information. Exactly what information do they get, and how can they use that information? So
you have the analytical engine in the front that is doing the analysis and finding what gets impacted and how much. If it is immediate impact, if it is something that is not immediate, but we need to be prepared for, etc., etc. And then that's fed into the curriculum design, into the course. Of course, it gives that information to the design of, maybe I should just put that little information in, how educational systems usually are, at least in Europe, in most places. There is the government who does the general guidelines of education, how it's supposed to be, the rules, etc. And then there is the second layer, which then interprets it and creates national programs for education. And then the schools take that and implement their classes based on that. That's more or less it. And this feeds into the upper level and the second level, which then grounds the lessons that are being generated with that information, with the new changes that need to be implemented. So it is all through.
Is this operational? Is this something that schools can already try out? What's the status at the moment of the tools that you're creating?
Kevin, I talk too much. You go ahead, please.
So we're still working on the skills feature, the analytical engine. So we've got an early prototype there. What is already operational is the curriculum hub, as we call it, and the lesson or the classroom hub. So what we already have is the analytics to some extent on the curriculum frameworks of certain countries, not all countries, because it's a wild west of curriculum frameworks and everything. So each country is different. Some countries are more digital already. In the Nordics, for example, Norway has an API that we can tap into other countries as well, Australia, for example. But then you have got countries, for example, Germany, who is like very cluttered in a way in curriculum design. So you have got 16 states in Germany, and each state has their own curriculum, and it's all PDF based or document based. So there's no data available. So that's why we not have all the countries at the moment. So we are focusing on some countries that we are working with, which is obviously the Nordics and also England. And now we're implementing Switzerland and Australia. And this is already working, yes.
Okay. So for example, if my school where my daughter goes to, if they wanted to start, testing this system, seeing how they can improve their curricula, how they could change, what do they need to do?
Contact us.
Reach out.
Amazing.
We are looking for pilots. Absolutely.
Yes.
And we are looking for pilot customers, pilots who are in a position to use it as if they were customers and hopefully stay as customers. So please do so. Get them to contact us.
I love it. So I thank you for describing that, and we can jump into the different target groups that your solution is targeting, but also that are affected by AI. So let's start with parents. What should parents do tomorrow, for example?
Talk to Kevin.
Reach out.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
so the first step is to be curious.
Yes.
Honestly, to be curious, to not be afraid of asking questions. Ask what their schools are doing already in this field, and ask around. Ask their fellow parents in the school
Yes.
community, for example, how they
Yes.
think about this topic. So this would be like the first thing. Do not be afraid of asking questions.
Yes.
This
But
is
how about, the access to the technology? Like, what should we be telling our kids? What should we tell the parents that, what to do with this?
It's a very, very different question, and there are different answers for different age groups. No,
Yes.
so I'm not saying that we should ban the technology, not at
No.
all. I even
Yeah.
use it with my 3-year-old,
Yeah.
for example. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but don't let them use it alone. This goes and yeah, this advice goes for all age groups, in my opinion. So we should not let children be alone while using this technology. So
Yeah.
be
Just as you
very
wouldn't for social media. I feel like the kids just go on social media. Like when you're 13, I think is the age. I think Norway is starting to put it for 16. But yes, I think that's really nice to try to be with your kid as they're using the technology. Okay, so that's for parents. What about schools? What should schools be doing?
reach out.
Reach out to you. Yes, because you do have a solution for
No,
this. So
also
yes,
there have the conversation with the
yes,
leadership team, with the teachers. When I give leadership classes or courses, I always tell those leaders to have the conversation with their team, because this technology is different than other technologies that we've seen in the past, because it can be very, very personal, and everyone and every team uses it differently and wants to use it differently. I've seen teams that use generative AI that have created avatars of each team member. So now they talk to the avatar first before they send an email, because the avatar will formulate the email in a way that each one likes reading it.
mm,
So and then you have teams who say, like, yeah, well, if you don't even put the effort in to write an email to you to me, then you don't respect me. So it's a very personal team culture impacting technology. So, and this is in the school as well. So the schools need to sit down and think, how do we want to use this, but not being scared about it, because they have
no.
to use it.
They have to
yes,
learn to use it, not to get scared and ban it.
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to be very, very practical. I really want to touch on this. So, how are kids going to do homework now that AI can generate anything? So, how is that going to happen?
The very interesting thing that I've seen, everyone is scared that they will just like prompt the homework and get the response and are done in 2 minutes or something. So, and children do that, but uneducated children in terms of AI do that.
Okay.
So what we've seen over the last 1.5 years, when we go into schools and talk to those children and tell them what happens if they simply use AI for homeworks, and if they understand what it does to their brain, to their what the impact on learning is if you simply get the response and so on. Those kids are pretty smart. So usually children are smarter than we think sometimes. So, and what we see in these cases is that they are not using it for homework in that extent anymore. So when they are educated on the topic, they use it as a learning helper and so on.
Yeah.
And also there are applications out there already that are very, very helpful in go into this tutor way. Yeah? So
Okay.
that you do not get the answer straight away. Khan Academy, Khan Migo from Khan Academy, for example, is
Yeah.
one platform that is very, very nice for learning.
Yeah.
And And yeah, but as I said, so it's also then comes to the parents again, because parents should support homework in a way. Yeah. So
Yes.
what I do with my daughter, for example, is when we use ChatGPT, Gemini, or something, it's like a little question that goes along with that. So if she has a question, it's either before I ask her, okay, what do you think is the answer? Or
Yeah.
as soon as we got the response, I say, do you think this is right? Do you
Yeah.
think this is an okay response? And
Yeah.
this already triggers this critical thinking skill that we need to
Yeah.
teach our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely cultivating that. But I also want to, before we jump to the next thing, Kevin, you have some books, and I would like to talk about those. Yes,
Yes,
please.
this one thing that I mentioned earlier was the language. So many
Yes.
parents that I've spoken to came to me after the webinars or so that I gave,
Yes.
or the lessons at school, and said like, okay, this is so interesting and so important what you're talking about, but how do I talk to my kids about this?
Yeah.
So, and that was the start of this little book series that I write, Little Clicks, Big Feelings. The first one was actually about homework help. So
Yes.
they are family books. So they are
So, but
half children's story and
yes.
half parent guide.
Okay. So, but tell me the titles so that people know what they are.
The first one is Robot Help Me Do Homework.
Yes.
The second one that will be released hopefully next week, we are in the final editing, is The Robot That Didn't Really Know Me. And it's about AI companions. So the idea
Okay.
of this book series is to pick like little parts of this digital jungle that we are living in and
Okay.
explain them in digestible ways. Yeah.
Will you share where people can buy these books?
Of course, we can put
Yes.
them in the show notes.
We will put them in the links below. Okay, fantastic. All right. Last target group is the government and society. So, what are we telling governments and societies?
What we're telling them is only part of the story, because governments and society does not necessarily listen so easily. It is a challenge. What we're trying to tell them is that they need to get their act together to understand what's coming and to be able to adapt much faster, because we're talking about education in general. But when you think of one of the fastest in Europe who's managed to get their national programs out is UK. That took 3 years approximately. And it came out last year, towards the end of it, November, December sometime, if I remember correctly. And we call it dead on arrival, because I mean, technology changes so fast. Technology changes much faster than the time it takes to create these 3 years. And that was the fastest in Europe, but even that doesn't hold in this case. And 5 years on the Norwegian curriculum, is from 2020, 6 years old. They're still not planning the new one. And yeah, it is a bit of a challenge. And what we're trying to tell them is be ready, get your act together, because you need to keep up with the changes, the pace of change, basically. And you have to plan your school systems, your planning systems accordingly. You have to use these tools. Hopefully, the kind of tools we also are providing, which probably others will also eventually also provide. So that is what we want to tell the governments, the authorities.
Yeah,
All
and
right. So,
then we
yeah.
have the problem that, okay, then the governments have maybe released a new framework, but then you need to bring this down to school, and
Yeah.
this needs to be faster as well, and teachers need to be upskilled and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we have already also seen in schools that they had a beautiful AI curriculum and had some topics, but then they said like, okay, but this is like very technical and we don't really know ourselves what we are supposed to teach.
Yeah.
So this is then the next problem that we need to
Yeah.
look into. And
Yeah.
my opinion, and this is what I'm also always saying to corporates as well. And again, this village, it takes the village to raise our children and to prepare our children. So we can't expect from schools to carry this burden alone,
Yeah.
because it's impossible that they establish this digital literacy, this technical knowledge and foundation, because
Yeah.
they are not the experts in technology. Technology is one of many topics that they
Yeah.
teach.
Yeah.
So this is where the industry needs to step in as well and take social responsibility, because they are the ones who use and build the technology. So they should support schools in teaching and preparing our children as well.
A couple of practical stuff that you've been asking about. One of the things that we can help with related to bringing parents and schools, teachers especially, up to speed is not the full system that we have, but we are also planning to release relatively soon, and we can inform you when that happens, what we call the B2C system. That's a subscription-based system, so anyone can put a couple of Norwegian crowns or dollars or euros in, and a teacher, for example, can generate, pull in a curriculum and generate a lesson according to that curriculum, anchored in that curriculum, or a parent can go in and talk to the system and get information and get updated with news and terminology that their kids, which usually know much better than them at that stage, are using, basically. So that system is most likely around the corner. It probably is not going to take very long time before we launch that. And in addition, Kevin is piloting, testing the Living with AI lab. It is a classroom educational program. Initially, he's trying it out with only 8 kids, but there's already a waiting list because people are very interested. And we will be pulling it. Once that is done, that pilot program is established, we will take that over to Norway and will be offering that here as well. And that's classroom. And there will be young science students or educational science students who will be teaching those courses, basically. And that will be also with Lego teaching sets. It's not only, otherwise it becomes very boring for the kids, basically.
Yeah.
So there is a whole program, and we are planning also for a summer camp or a summer school with that too. Eventually, that will probably happen. Maybe, I don't know, Kevin, around May-ish, June, July?
Yes, we're starting the first groups now in actually next week.
Yeah.
We start with the first children, and there's already interest from some companies who ask for a little summer camp session as well, and so on. And yeah, as I said, it all for me and for us, it's all about the community. It's not just teaching the kids; it's also teaching the parents in that case.
Yeah.
And building the community.
Amazing. So perhaps we can close it up with a call to action for people and a note on optimism about the future, if you like.
Yes, as I said, so for me, I think the most important thing always has been, but nowadays much more, is stay curious, stay open, be open for the changes that are coming. Don't be afraid. Don't let the fear mongers win. Build this village. Talk to each other, because what we see is that people are usually simply scared of asking questions because they might seem like unknowing or dumb. But all of us are. This whole technology is very new. I mean, there are very few experts that like Naci who work in this field for like 40 years now or something. So this is all new to every one of us, and don't let yourself be blinded by yes, I'm an
Yeah.
AI guru expert on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah. Amazing. How about you, Naci?
Yeah, well, we've been saying things about the balance and all that stuff. So that is really the closing message. One of the things that I would like to say is be an optimist, but not stupid, more or less. But we need to be prepared. It's not just that I had a talk in this Shield webinar, and my theme was yield, shield, or wield, question mark. We cannot yield. We cannot just open up and take it in as it comes. That's risky.
Yeah.
But we cannot only shield either. We cannot be so strict that we just reject the whole thing. You cannot really reject technology. In a sense, if we do that, especially for the kids, if we just ban everything, then we're stealing their future. It's not good. It's not really a very good approach. But wielding, understanding the technology, remedying the negative parts, and using effectively the positive parts is the solution. Always. Also with this technology.
Yes, because we don't want to have digitally disabled children, no?
No.
So.
Yeah, and this goes back to the car, right? Like we have the
Yeah.
car and then we put the roads and we put the seat belts, and this is what you guys are doing. So I love it. Thank you so much for being here. I loved the conversation. It's super important. And I think it's a space where we need to continue the conversation. We need to have the parents, the schools, governments, companies,
All of them.
because this is the transition. We're transitioning into a new world, and we don't know, nobody knows exactly what that world is going to look like, but we can all help a little bit to shape it. So thank you both so much, and I hope to see you next time.
Thanks.